Well, we are getting ready to start back our story on Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And I don't know about you all, but I really enjoyed last week being off. Got some much needed kind of rest. The weather was great at the beginning of the week, which was super nice. But we want to pick back up with our story. And when we stopped last week, Hagrid had just told Harry that his parents were wizards, and all of the letters that he had been getting were about starting school at Hogwarts. And Hagrid was in the process of telling Harry what had truly happened to his parents. Up until this point, the Dursleys had told Harry that his parents had died in a car accident. Now, Hagrid was not very happy about that. The idea that he would have told him such a thing. So, we're just going to kind of jump in here. It says, "Sorry," he said, "but it's that sad. I knew your mom and dad, and nicer people you couldn't have found anyhow. You know who killed them, and this is the real mystery of the thing, he tried to kill you too. Wanted to make a clean job of it, I suppose, or maybe he just liked killing by then. But he couldn't do it. Never wondered how you got that mark on your forehead? That was no ordinary cut. Why, that's what you get when a powerful evil curse touches you. Took care of your mom and your dad and your house even. But it didn't work on you. And that's why you're famous, Harry. No one ever lived after he decided to kill him. No one except you. And he killed some of the best witches and wizards of the age. The McKinnons, the Bones, the Pruitts, and you was only a baby, and you lived." Something very painful was going on in Harry's mind. As Hagrid's story came to a close, he saw again the blinding flash of green light, more clearly than he had ever remembered it before. And he remembered something else. For the first time in his life, a high, cold, cruel laugh. Hagrid was watching him sadly. "I took you from the ruined house myself, or on Dumbledore's orders, and I brought you to this lot." "Loads of old tosh," said Uncle Vernon, and Harry jumped. Why, he had almost forgotten that the Dursleys were there. Uncle Vernon certainly seemed to have got back his courage. He was glaring at Hagrid, and his fists were clenched. "Now you listen here, boy," he snarled. "I accept there's something strange about you. Probably nothing a good beating wouldn't have cured. And as for all this about your parents, well, they were weirdos, no denying it, and the world's better off without them, in my opinion. Ask for all they got, getting mixed up with these wizarding types. Just what I expected. Always knew they'd come to a sticky end." But at that moment, Hagrid leapt from the sofa and drew a battered pink umbrella from inside his coat, and pointing this at Uncle Vernon like a sword, and he said, "I'm warning you, Dursley, I'm warning you one more word." Well, in danger of being speared on the end of an umbrella by a bearded giant, Uncle Vernon's courage failed again. He flattened himself against the wall and fell silent. "That's better," said Hagrid, breathing heavily and sitting back down on the sofa, which this time sagged right down to the floor. Harry, meanwhile, still had questions to ask, hundreds of them. "But what happened to you know who?" "Good question, Harry. Disappeared. He vanished. Same night he tried to kill you. Makes you even more famous. That's the biggest mystery, see? He was getting more and more powerful. Why'd he go?" "Some say he died. Codswallop, in my opinion. Dunno if he had enough human left in him to die. Some say he's still out there biding his time like, but I don't believe it. People who was on his side came back to ours. Some of them came out of kind of trances. Don't reckon they could have done if he was coming back." Most of us reckon he's still out there somewhere, but lost his powers. Too weak to carry on. 'Cause something about you finished him. Now, Harry, there was something going on that night he hadn't counted on. I don't know what it was, no one does. But something about you stumped him. All right? Well, Hagrid looked at Harry with warmth and respect blazing in his eyes. But Harry, instead of feeling pleased and proud, felt quite sure there had been a horrible mistake. A wizard? Him? How could he possibly be? He'd spent his life being clouted, that means hit, by Dudley and bullied by Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon. If he was really a wizard, why hadn't they been turned into warty toads every time they tried to lock him in his cupboard? If he'd once defeated the greatest sorcerer in the world, how come Dudley had always been able to kick him around like a football? Hagrid, he said quietly, I think you must have made a mistake. I don't think I can be a wizard. And to his surprise, Hagrid chuckled. Not a wizard, eh? Never made things happen when you was scared or angry? And Harry looked into the fire. But now he came to think about it. Every odd thing that had ever made his aunt and uncle furious with him had happened when he, Harry, had been upset or angry. Chased by Dudley's gang, he had somehow found himself out of their reach. Dreading going to school with that ridiculous haircut, why, he had managed to grow it back. And the very last time Dudley had hit him, hadn't he got his revenge without even realizing he was doing it? Hadn't he set a boa constrictor on him? Well, Harry looked back at Hagrid, smiling, and saw that Hagrid was positively beaming at him. See, said Hagrid, Harry Potter, not a wizard. Pfft, you wait, you'll be right famous at Hogwarts. But Uncle Vernon wasn't going to give in without a fight. Haven't I told you he's not going? He hissed. He's going to Stonewall High, and he'll be grateful for it. I've read those letters, and he needs all sorts of rubbish. Spell books and wands, and if he wants to go, a great muggle like you won't stop him, growled Hagrid. Stop Lily and James Potter's son going to Hogwarts. You're mad. His name's been down ever since he was born. He's off to the finest school of witchcraft and wizardry in the world. 7 years there, and he won't know himself. He'll be with youngsters of his own sort for a change, and he'll be under the greatest headmaster Hogwarts ever had, Albus Dumbledore. I am not paying for some crackpot old fool to teach him magic tricks, yelled Uncle Vernon. But he had finally gone too far. Hagrid seized his umbrella and whirled it over his head. Never, he thundered, insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me. Well, he brought the umbrella swishing down through the air to point at Dudley. There was a flash of violet light and a sound like a firecracker, a sharp squeal, and next second Dudley was dancing on the spot with his hands clasped on his fat bottom, howling in pain. And when he turned his back on them, Harry saw a curly pig's tail poking through a hole in his trousers. Uncle Vernon roared, pulling Aunt Petunia and Dudley into the other room. He cast one terrified look at Hagrid and slammed the door behind him. Hagrid looked down at his umbrella and stroked his beard. I shouldn't have lost my temper, he said ruefully. But it didn't work anyway. Meant to turn him into a pig, but I suppose he was so much like a pig anyway, there wasn't much left to do. And he cast a sideways look at Harry under his bushy eyebrows. Be grateful if you didn't mention that to anyone at Hogwarts, he said. I'm not supposed to do magic, strictly speaking. I was allowed to do a little bit to follow you and get you letters to you and stuff. One of the reasons I was so keen to take on the job. Why aren't you supposed to do magic?" asked Harry. "Oh, well, I was at Hogwarts myself, but I got expelled, to tell you the truth. In my 3rd year, they snapped me wand in half and everything. But Dumbledore let me stay on as gamekeeper. Great man, Dumbledore." "Well, why were you expelled?" "It's getting late, and we've got lots to do tomorrow," said Hagrid loudly. "Got to get up to town, get all your books and that." And he took off his thick black coat and threw it to Harry. "You can kip under that," he said. "Don't mind if it wriggles a bit. I think I still got a couple of dormice in one of the pockets." This is what the place looks like where they're staying at. Well, looks a little precarious, doesn't it? All the dreariness from the storm. Well, Harry woke early the next morning. Although he could tell it was daylight, he kept his eyes shut tight. "It was a dream," he told himself firmly. "I dreamt a giant named Hagrid came to tell me I was going to a school for wizards. When I opened my eyes, I'll be at home in my cupboard." There was suddenly a loud tapping noise. And there's Aunt Petunia knocking on the door, Harry thought, his heart sinking. But he still didn't open his eyes. It had been such a good dream. Tap, tap, tap. "All right," Harry mumbled. "I'm getting up." And he sat up, and Hagrid's heavy coat fell off him. The hut was full of sunlight, and the storm was over. Hagrid himself was asleep on the collapsed sofa, and there was an owl rapping its claws on the window, a newspaper held in its beak. Well, Harry scrambled to his feet, so happy he felt as though a large balloon was swelling inside him. He went straight to the window and jerked it open, and the owl swooped in and dropped the newspaper on top of Hagrid, who didn't wake up. The owl then fluttered onto the floor and began to attack Hagrid's coat. "Don't do that!" And Hagrid tried to wave the owl out of the way, but it snapped its beak fiercely at him and carried on savaging the coat. "Hagrid!" said Harry loudly. "There's an owl!" "Pay him," Hagrid grunted into the sofa. "What?" "He wants paying for delivering the paper. Look in the pockets." Well, Hagrid's coat seemed to be made out of nothing but pockets. Bunches of keys, slug pellets, balls of string, mint handbugs, tea bags, and finally, Harry pulled out a handful of strange-looking coins. "Give him 5 nuts," said Hagrid sleepily. "Nuts?" "The little bronze ones." So Harry counted out 5 little bronze coins, and the owl held out its legs so he could put the money into a small leather pouch tied to it. Then it flew off through the open window. And Hagrid yawned loudly and sat up and stretched. "We'd best be off, Harry. Lots to do today. Got to get up to London and buy all your stuff for school." Harry was turning over the wizard coins and looking at them. He had just thought of something which made him feel as though the happy balloon inside him had got a puncture. Hagrid?" said Hagrid, who was pulling on his huge boots. "I haven't got any money. And you heard Uncle Vernon last night. He won't pay for me to go and learn magic." "Don't worry about that," said Hagrid, standing up and scratching his head. "Do you think your parents didn't leave you anything?" "But if their house was destroyed—" "Why, they didn't keep their gold in the house, boy. Nah. First stop for us is Gringotts, the Wizard's Bank. Have a sausage. They're not bad cold. And I would say not to a bit of your birthday cake, neither." "Wizards have banks?" "Just the one. Gringotts. Run by goblins." Well, Harry dropped the bit of sausage he was holding. "Goblins?" "Yeah. So you'd be mad to try and rob it. I'll tell you that. Never mess with goblins. Now, Gringotts is the safest place in the world for anything you want to keep safe, except maybe Hogwarts. As a matter of fact, I got to visit Gringotts anyway for Dumbledore. Hogwarts business." And Hagrid drew himself up proudly. "He usually gets me to do important stuff for him. Fetching, getting things from Gringotts. Knows he can trust me, you see. Got everything? Come on, then. Well, Harry followed Hagrid out onto the rock. The sky was quite clear now, and the sea gleamed in the sunlight. The boat Uncle Vernon had hired was still there, with a lot of water in the bottom after the storm. "How did you get here?" Harry asked, looking around for another boat. "Well, I flew," said Hagrid. "Flew?" "Yeah, but we'll go back in this. Not supposed to use magic now, gotcha." And they settled down in the boat, Harry still staring at Hagrid, trying to imagine him flying. "Seems a shame to row, though," said Hagrid, giving Harry another of his sideways looks. "If I were to speed things up a bit, would you mind not mentioning it at Hogwarts?" "Of course not," said Harry, eager to see more magic. Well, Hagrid pulled out the pink umbrella again, and he tapped it twice on the side of the boat, and they sped off toward land. "Why would you be mad to try and rob Gringotts?" Harry asked. "Spells and enchantments," said Hagrid, unfolding his newspaper as he spoke. "They say there's dragons guarding the high security vaults, and then you gotta find your way. Gringotts is hundreds of miles under London, see, deep under the underground. Well, you'd die of hunger trying to get out, even if you did manage to get your hands on some of it." Well, Harry sat and thought about this while Hagrid read his newspaper, the Daily Prophet. And Harry had learned from Uncle Vernon that people liked to be left alone while they did this. But it was very difficult. He'd never had so many questions in his life. "Ministry of Magic messing things up as usual," Hagrid muttered, turning the page. "There's a Ministry of Magic?" Harry asked before he could stop himself. "Course," said Hagrid. "They wanted Dumbledore for Ministry, of course, but he'd never leave Hogwarts, so old Cornelius Fudge got the job. Bungler, if ever there was one. So he pelts Dumbledore with owls every morning, asking for advice." "But what does a Ministry of Magic do?" "Well, their main job is to keep it from the muggles that there's still witches and wizards up and down the country." "Why?" "Why? Blimey, Harry, everyone would be wanting magic solutions to the problems. Nah, we'd best left alone." Well, at this moment, the boat bumped gently into the harbor wall, and Hagrid folded up his newspaper, and they clambered up the stone steps onto the street. Passerbyers stared a lot at Hagrid as they walked through the little town to the station. And Harry couldn't blame them. Not only was Hagrid twice as tall as anyone else, he kept pointing at perfectly ordinary things like parking meters and saying loudly, "See that, Harry? Things these muggles dream up." "Hagrid," said Harry, panting a bit as he ran to keep up, "did you say there are dragons at Gringotts?" "Well, so they say," said Hagrid. "Crikey, I'd like a dragon." "You'd like one?" "Wanted one ever since I was a kid." "Well, here we go." And they had reached the station. There was a train to London in 5 minutes' time, and Hagrid, who didn't understand Muggle money, as he called it, gave the notes to Harry so he could buy their tickets. People stared more than ever on the train, while Hagrid took up 2 seats and sat knitting what looked like a canary yellow circus tent. "Still got your letter, Harry?" he asked as he counted stitches. And Harry took the parchment envelope out of his pocket. "Good," said Hagrid. "There's a list there of everything you need." And Harry unfolded a second piece of paper he hadn't noticed the night before, and it read, "Uniform. First-year student will require 3 sets of plain work robes, black, 1 plain pointed hat, black, for day wear, 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon hide or similar, 1 winter cloak, black, with silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothes should carry name tags. Instead of books, all students should have a copy of each of the following: the Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, A History of Magic, Magical Theory, A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, 1,000 Magical Herbs and Fungi, magical drafts and potions, fantastic beasts and where to find them, the dark forces, a guide to self-protection, and other equipment. One wand, one cauldron, one set glass of crystal phials, one telescope, and one set of brass scales. Students may also bring an owl or a rat or a toad. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomsticks. Can we buy all this in London? Harry wondered aloud. If you know where to go, said Hagrid. Well, Harry had never been to London before, and although Hagrid seemed to know where he was going, he was obviously not used to getting there in an ordinary way. He got stuck in the ticket barrier at the underground and complained loudly that the seats were too small and the trains too slow. I don't know how the Muggles manage without magic, he said, as they climbed a broken-down escalator which led up to a bustling road lined with shops. Hagrid was so huge that he parted the crowd easily. All Harry had to do was keep close behind him, and they passed bookshops and music stores, hamburger bars and cinemas, but nowhere that looked as if it could sell you a magic wand. Why, this was just an ordinary street full of ordinary people. Could there really be piles of wizards' gold buried miles beneath them? Were there really shops that sold spell books and broomsticks? Might this not all be some huge joke that the Dursleys had cooked up? If Harry hadn't known that the Dursleys had no sense of humor, he might have thought so. Yet, somehow, even though everything Hagrid had told him so far was unbelievable, Harry couldn't help trusting him. This is it, said Hagrid, coming to a halt. The Leaky Cauldron. It's a famous place. It was a tiny, grubby-looking pub. If Hagrid hadn't pointed it out, Harry wouldn't have noticed it was there. The people hurrying by didn't glance at it. Their eyes slid from the big bookshop on one side to the record shop on the other, as if they couldn't even see the Leaky Cauldron at all. In fact, Harry had the most peculiar feeling that only he and Hagrid could see it. Before he could mention this, Hagrid had steered him inside. For a famous place, it was very dark and shabby. Why, a few old women were sitting in a corner, drinking tiny glasses of sherry, and one of them was smoking a long pipe. And a little man in a top hat was talking to the old barman, who was quite bald and looked like a gummy walnut. The low buzz of chatter stopped when they walked in. Everyone seemed to know Hagrid, and they waved and smiled at him, and the barman reached for a glass, saying, "The usual Hagrid?" "Can't, Tom. I'm on Hogwarts business," said Hagrid, clapping his great hand on Harry's shoulder, making Harry's knees buckle. "Good Lord," said the barman, peering at Harry. Can this be?" Well, the Leaky Cauldron had suddenly gone completely still and silent. "Bless my soul," whispered the old barman. "Harry Potter? What an honor." Well, he hurried out from behind the bar and rushed towards Harry and seized his hand with tears in his eyes. "Welcome back, Mr. Potter, welcome back." Well, Harry didn't know what to say. Everyone was looking at him. The old woman with the pipe was puffing on it without realizing it had gone out, and Hagrid was beaming. Then there was a great scraping of chairs, and next moment Harry found himself shaking hands with everyone in the Leaky Cauldron. "Doris Crockford, Mr. Potter. Can't believe I'm meeting you at last." "So proud, Mr. Potter. I'm just so proud. Always wanted to shake your hand. I'm all of a flutter." "Delighted, Mr. Potter. Just can't tell you. Diggle's the name. DeAngelis Diggle." "Well, I've seen you before," said Harry, as DeAngelis Diggle's top hat fell off in his excitement. "You bowed to me once in a shop." "He remembers," cried DeAngelis Diggle, looking around at everyone. "Did you hear that? He remembers me." Well, Harry shook hands again and again. Doris Crockford kept coming back for more, and a pale young man made his way forward very nervously and one of his eyes was twitching. "Professor Quirrell," said Hagrid. "Harry, Professor Quirrell will be one of your teachers at Hogwarts." "Potter?" stammered Professor Quirrell, grasping Harry's hand. "Can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you." "What sort of magic do you teach, Professor Quirrell?" Defense against the dark arts," muttered Professor Quirrell, as though he'd rather not think about it. Not that you need it, eh, Potter?" He laughed nervously. "You'll be getting all your equipment, I suppose. I've got to pick up a new book on vampires by myself." And he looked terrified at the thought. But the others wouldn't let Professor Quirrell keep Harry to himself. It took almost 10 minutes to get away from them all at last, and Hagrid managed to make himself heard over the babble. "Must get on. Lots to buy. Come on, Harry." And Doris Crockford shook Harry's hand one last time, and Harry led them through the bars and out into a small walled courtyard, where there was nothing but a dustbin and a few weeds. And Hagrid grinned at Harry. "Told you, didn't I? I told you was famous. Even Professor Quirrell was trembling to meet you. Mind you, he's usually a trembling." "Is he always that nervous?" "Oh, yeah, poor bloke. Brilliant mind. He was fine while he was studying out of books, but then he took a year off to get some first-hand experience. They say he met vampires in the Black Forest, and there was a nasty bit of trouble with a hag. He ain't never been the same. Scared of his own subject. Now, where's my umbrella? Vampires? Hags?" Hagrid's head was swimming. Hagrid, meanwhile, was counting bricks in the wall above the dustbin. 3 up, 2 across," he muttered. "Right. Now, stand back, Harry." He tapped the wall 3 times with the point of his umbrella. The brick he had touched quivered, and it wriggled, and in the middle a small hole appeared. It grew wider and wider and wider. A second later, they were facing an archway large enough even for Hagrid. An archway into a cobbled street which twisted and turned out of sight. "Welcome," said Hagrid, "to Diagon Alley." And here's just a little snapshot of what Diagon Alley looked like. And he grinned at Harry's amazement, and they stepped through the archway, and Harry looked quickly over his shoulder and saw the archway shrink instantly back into solid wall. This is probably a good place for us to stop, right at Diagon Alley. So I think in tomorrow's reading, we will get to hopefully where Harry makes it to school. So, same time on Thursday. Bye.